There are very few visual novels that I consider games that really moved me, something that I ended up loving more than just the short time that I played to review them. About 3 years ago, I reviewed a mystery and horror VN from Katakawa Games on the PS Vita called Root Letter, and it was one of those games. It's something that I love, that I've gone back to, and I've even gotten funny stories about. I still remember the first time I went through the game and got the crossed paths or bad ending. It was right before I went to a friend's for the weekend and I forgot to bring the game with me. I was so heartbroken over that ending that it bugged me that entire weekend until I could get back to my house and play through it for the good and true ending. Of course, when the game got remade for the Nintendo Switch and I got an early review copy, you could probably guess what ending I put off until the very end. That remake is what we're going to talk about today, something I've been looking forward to ever since it was announced for Western release. Here is my review of Root Letter Last Answer for the Nintendo Switch. The main story of Last Answer is the same story we got in Root Letter. You play as a young man that fell in love with a pen pal he wrote letters to as a high school student and lost contact with. But 15 years later, he receives a mysterious new letter with her claiming to have killed someone. In response to this, he travels to her hometown to try to find her. Unfortunately, her family house is nowhere to be found, and all of the classmates he learned about in her letters seem intent on not telling him a single thing, quickly turning his Find My Pen Pal trip into a mystery case where he has to start digging up their past so they'll tell him where she is. The things I love the most about this story are the mystery elements thrown into it and the character arcs. Every chapter is you learning about a new classmate, tracking that classmate down and gathering evidence to find out more about them. It's like every chapter is its own character arc for each of the main cast members. But that's not to say everything about the story is great. There are a couple things that bring the story down. The first chapter starts off things a little bit slow. Well, maybe slow's not the right word. The game really starts getting exciting once you get to chapter 2 and you start finding and interrogating the classmates. The first chapter is more about gameplay tutorials and world building. It's a little interesting in its own right, but it's nowhere near as exciting as the game gets once you hit chapter 2 and start tracking down those classmates. The other point are the grammatical errors. All of these errors are very small and you always know what's being said despite them being there, but there are a lot of them. When it comes to gameplay, this is a visual novel with some point and click and interactive elements thrown into the mix. For the majority of the game, you're going to be navigating through story scenes, but there are interactive segments where you can examine environments for clues or use a menu to move from place to place. Now, first of all, let's talk about all of the differences between Root Letter and Root Letter Last Answer. This new remake added a lot of new features, and the biggest of that was drama mode. This is a live action mode replacing all drawn environments and characters with realistic backdrops and photos of real actors and actresses playing the parts of these characters. You can freely switch between these two modes in the main menu, but honestly, I think some of the live action versions of these characters look better than the original versions. They also added some new story content in the form of 4 answer arc story routes that are extensions for 4 of the original game's endings, as well as a gallery section called Mystery Actress that gives you a little bit of a hint on the franchise's future. And just as a side note in case you were wondering, you unlock the answer arcs and the Mystery Actress section by completing all 5 original endings. You don't get the Cursed Letters extension ending when you get the Cursed Letter ending. They're completely separate on the main menu. The final new feature is the ability to skip Chapter 8 when you're replaying the game for different endings. In the original game, you could skip all chapters outside of dialogue choices when you wanted different endings except Chapter 8. You had to play it in its entirety, but in Last Answer you can skip Chapter 8 as well, which will save you a lot of time. Now that we've got all of the new features out of the way, let's talk about how you actually play the game. In typical visual novel fashion, you go through story scenes, but almost everything else is very different. The game has different routes and endings, so you've got dialogue choices, but not in the way you'd expect. At the beginning of each chapter, you read one of the letters from your pen pal and you're given choices on how you want to respond to them. How you respond to these letters will dictate what route you get when you get to the end of the game. How you go through each chapter is also very different. This is a very interactive visual novel. Instead of just going through story scenes, you freely move from place to place in the town of Matsu and learn new locations you need to go for the story by examining areas around you, asking NPCs various questions, and checking your guidebook that you pick up towards the beginning of the game. And the game only gets more interactive from there when you track down those classmates and start interrogating them through what the game calls investigations. During these sequences, you use items, observations, and questions to try to prove they're one of the friends from your pen pal's letters and force them to fess up about who your pen pal is and where to find her. These sequences also use a timing-based minigame called Max Mode, where you have a limited time to look at different choices and make the right one to move the investigation forward. All of these investigation sequences remind me of the Ace Attorney games. Whenever you choose an item, ask a question, or go into max mode, all of your responses show up on screen in such a dramatic way that it's very similar to the objection animation from that series. Now, this game system works very well, and especially with all of the new story stuff, you get a good amount of content and length out of this game. If you follow a guide and don't skip over text, you can probably get your first ending in around 10 hours. And once you beat the game for the first time, you unlock the true ending for your second playthrough, so you can go back through again using that skip feature and probably get that ending in only about 2 or 3 hours. Accounting for that and the fact that the new story scenarios don't unlock until you've cleared all 5 of the original endings, you're probably not going to be spending any less than 15 to 20 hours on this game. And that's more than enough content for the $30 price tag, $10 cheaper than the original launch price of the PS Vita version. Now let's get into presentation, which is good all around. Graphically, the game looks great. All of the backgrounds are nice, crisp, and clear, and you've even got that clear difference between all of the cartoony backgrounds of original mode and all of the realism to the photos and backgrounds of drama mode. I have no complaints about performance, so let's go right into battery life, which is great as I would expect. On the original Switch model, Root Letter Last Answer has a battery range of 4 hours and 46 minutes on high settings, up to 5 hours and 30 minutes on low settings. And on the Redbox or V2 model, it has a battery range of 7 hours and 30 minutes on high settings, up to 9 hours and 50 minutes on low settings. Now, in conclusion, Last Answer brings the original game to a new handheld for a cheaper price and with more content. On the downside, there are a fair amount of grammatical errors in the game's script, but it's improved the original Root Letter in almost every other way. Whether you're a fan of VNs or just want to see the game in the new live-action drama mode, this is a good game that you can get a lot of time out of. Reviews to Go rates Root Letter Last Answer for the Nintendo Switch a 9 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thanks for watching and have a great day.